The stars looked different through the viewports of the human ship Odyssey. Lisa Grant pressed her hand against the cool metal wall and watched the alien sun grow larger as they approached the Vorthak homeworld. After 3 years of preparation, humanity was finally making first contact with one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Lisa adjusted her diplomatic uniform and checked her datapad one more time. As the lead xenobiologist on the mission, she carried the hopes of billions of humans. The Vorthak had agreed to meet with Earth's representatives, but their messages had been cold and formal. Nobody knew what to expect. Captain Jake Murphy walked into the observation deck where Lisa stood. His face showed the same worry that kept everyone awake during the long journey. "You ready for this?" he asked, looking out at the growing planet below. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting an alien species that conquered half the galaxy," Lisa replied. She tried to smile, but her stomach felt tight. The Vorthak Empire stretched across dozens of star systems. Their military was famous for crushing any resistance quickly and completely. Dr. Amy Brooks joined them at the viewport. The older woman had spent months preparing Lisa and the other diplomats for this moment. "Remember what we practiced," she said softly. "Stay calm, observe everything, and don't take anything personally. We're here to learn about them as much as to negotiate." The ship shuddered slightly as they entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the clouds, Lisa could see massive cities made of dark metal and stone. Tall towers reached toward the sky like claws. Everything looked hard and sharp, built for war rather than beauty. "Incoming transmission," announced the ship's communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that made Lisa's breath catch in her throat. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick gray-green skin that looked like armor plating. Its face was angular and harsh, with deep-set eyes that glowed with a cold yellow light. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak Imperial Guard. Your vessel will land at the coordinates I am sending. You will follow all instructions exactly, or you will be destroyed. The Vorthak Empire does not tolerate weakness or disobedience." The transmission ended abruptly. Captain Murphy looked at Lisa with raised eyebrows. "Friendly bunch," he muttered. Lisa studied the image frozen on the screen. Everything about the commander suggested violence and dominance. His posture, his tone, even the way he held his head spoke of a being who was used to others fearing him. She made mental notes about his physical characteristics and body language. Understanding alien psychology would be crucial for these negotiations. The Odyssey landed in a massive spaceport surrounded by Vorthak warships. Each vessel was 3 times larger than the human ship and bristled with weapons. Hundreds of Vorthak soldiers lined the landing area, all carrying energy rifles and wearing battle armor. "Quite the welcome party," Dr. Brooks observed as they prepared to disembark. The diplomatic team consisted of Lisa, Captain Murphy, Ambassador Richard Stone, and 2 security officers. They had decided to keep the group small to appear less threatening. The airlock opened with a hiss, and hot, dry air rushed in. The planet's gravity was slightly heavier than Earth's, making each step feel weighted. Lisa walked down the ramp behind Ambassador Stone, trying to project confidence while her heart pounded. Commander Zethkar waited at the bottom of the ramp, flanked by a dozen guards. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Scars covered his arms and face, and his yellow eyes seemed to look right through the humans. He studied each member of the diplomatic team like a predator sizing up prey. "So these are the famous humans," he said, his voice filled with contempt. "I expected something more impressive. You look soft and weak, like all the other inferior species we have conquered." Ambassador Stone stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. "Commander Zethkar, we are honored to meet with representatives of the great Vorthak Empire. We come in peace, hoping to establish trade relations that will benefit both our peoples." Zethkar's laugh was harsh and mocking. "Trade? You think you have something we want? Your technology is primitive. Your military is pathetic. Your entire species could be eliminated in a matter of days if we chose to do so." Lisa watched the commander carefully as he spoke. She noticed how he stood with his chest puffed out, how he gestured broadly to command attention. These were classic dominance displays, similar to what she had observed in aggressive animals on Earth. The Vorthak commander was trying to establish his superiority through intimidation. "Perhaps," Lisa said quietly, stepping forward. "But sometimes the most valuable things come from unexpected sources. On Earth, we have learned much from studying even the smallest creatures." Zethkar's yellow eyes fixed on her with sudden interest. "You dare to speak without permission, female?" The way he said the word made it sound like an insult. "What is your purpose here?" "I am Lisa Grant, xenobiologist. I study different forms of life to understand how they adapt and survive." She kept her voice calm and professional, even though every instinct told her to step back from this dangerous creature. "A scientist," Zethkar said, circling around her slowly. "How amusing. Do you think your little studies will help you understand the Vorthak? Do you believe you can analyze us like bacteria in a laboratory?" Lisa met his gaze steadily. "I believe that all intelligent life has something to teach us. Even predators have their place in the natural order." The commander stopped circling and leaned down until his face was inches from hers. His breath smelled like sulfur and metal. "You have spirit, I will give you that. But spirit can be broken. I have broken the will of entire species. I have watched proud warriors crawl on their bellies and beg for mercy." He straightened up and addressed the entire group. "You humans think you are special because you discovered space travel and built metal ships, but you are nothing new. Every species believes they are unique until they meet the Vorthak Empire. Then they learn their true place." Zethkar's eyes returned to Lisa. Something in her calm response had caught his attention in a way that clearly bothered him. "You, scientist, you interest me. I think I will make you my special project during your stay here. I will show you exactly what happens to those who believe they can understand the Vorthak." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her expression neutral. "I look forward to learning about your culture, Commander." "Yes," Zethkar said, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You will learn. And when I am finished with you, you will serve as an example to your entire species of what it means to challenge the Vorthak Empire. I vow that I will break you completely." As the guards escorted the human delegation into the fortress-like government building, Lisa realized that the real negotiations had not yet begun. But already she had learned something important about their hosts. The Vorthak were driven by a need to dominate others, to prove their superiority through fear and violence. She began to wonder what they were really afraid of. The Vorthak government building felt more like a prison than a place of diplomacy. Dark corridors stretched in every direction, lit by harsh red lights that cast strange shadows on the walls. Lisa and the other humans were given separate rooms in what their hosts called the guest quarters. but armed guards stood outside every door. Lisa's room was small and bare, with only a metal bed and a tiny window that looked out onto a courtyard, filled with training Vorthak soldiers. She could hear them shouting battle cries as they practiced with weapons that crackled with energy. Everything about this place was designed to intimidate visitors and show off Vorthak military power. On their second day, Commander Zethkar came to collect Lisa personally. He arrived with 4 guards, even though she posed no physical threat to any of them. The message was clear. She was a prisoner, not a guest. "Today you begin your education, human," Zethkar announced as he led her through the corridors. "You will learn what it means to face the Vorthak Empire." He brought her to a large chamber where dozens of Vorthak officers sat in tiered seating, like an arena. They watched with hungry eyes as Lisa was brought to the center of the room. She felt like a specimen being prepared for dissection. "This female claims to be a scientist," Zethkar announced to the assembled crowd. "She believes she can study us and understand our ways. Today we will test her theories." He gestured to a table filled with strange devices and instruments. "These are tools used by species we have conquered. Each one represents a different approach to survival. Show us, scientist, which one you think would be most effective against Vorthak warriors." Lisa approached the table carefully. She recognized some of the items as weapons, while others looked like communication devices or scientific instruments. The test was obviously designed to make her look foolish no matter what she chose. "I noticed these tools come from different species," she said, picking up a crystalline device that hummed with energy. "Each one represents a unique approach to problem solving. The creators of this instrument appear to have focused on energy manipulation rather than brute force." "Correct," Zethkar said with surprise in his voice. "The Zalani race built those before we destroyed their homeworld. But knowing their history will not help you now. Choose your weapon and face one of my warriors in combat." Lisa set down the crystal device. "With respect, Commander, I am not a warrior. I am a scientist. My tools are observation and analysis, not violence." The Vorthak officers laughed and made mocking sounds. Zethkar's eyes glowed brighter with anger. "You refuse to fight? Even when faced with death?" "I refuse to play a game designed to prove a false point," Lisa replied calmly. "You want me to fail so you can demonstrate human weakness. But choosing not to fight when fighting serves no purpose is not weakness. It is intelligence." The laughter stopped. Zethkar stepped closer, his massive form towering over her. "You think you are clever, human. But cleverness without strength is useless. In this galaxy, only the strong survive." "Perhaps," Lisa said. "But I have observed that the species which survive longest are often those that adapt, rather than those that simply use force. A virus can kill a warrior, even though it has no weapons." Zethkar grabbed her arm roughly, his claws digging into her sleeve. "You compare yourself to a disease. How fitting. But diseases can be cured." He dragged her to another part of the chamber, where a large screen showed images of space battles. Vorthak ships destroyed vessel after vessel belonging to other species. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers against the darkness of space. "Watch and learn," Zethkar commanded. "This is the fate of every species that thought they could resist us. The Kalani believed their shield technology made them invincible. The Morvans thought their speed could save them. The Helsing trusted in their numbers. All of them died believing they were special." Lisa watched the destruction with a heavy heart, but she also studied the tactics being used. The Vorthak approach was always the same: Overwhelming force applied quickly and brutally. It was effective, but it was also predictable. "I see a pattern," she said quietly. "What pattern?" Zethkar demanded. "Your enemies all tried to fight you, using their greatest strengths. The shield builders relied on defense. The fast ships relied on speed. But they all tried to oppose you directly." Lisa looked up at the commander. What happened to species that did not fight back? The question seemed to confuse Zethkar. Species that do not fight are conquered immediately. They become slaves, or they die. But some must have survived as servants or vassals. What did those species do differently? Zethkar's grip on her arm tightened. "You ask dangerous questions, human. Are you suggesting that surrender is wisdom? I am suggesting that there might be forms of strength you have not encountered yet." Lisa kept her voice steady despite the pain in her arm. "Every predator in nature eventually encounters prey that survives through methods other than fighting." The commander released her arm and stepped back. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his scarred features. Then his expression hardened again. "Enough philosophy," he growled. "If you will not fight with weapons, you will face other tests." He led her to a different area where strange machines hummed with energy. These devices test mental strength and endurance. They have broken the minds of champions from a dozen species. Let us see how long your human brain can withstand them. Lisa was strapped into a chair facing a complex array of lights and speakers. When the machine activated, waves of sound and flashing patterns assaulted her senses. The combination was designed to cause disorientation and panic. But Lisa had trained for sensory experiments during her scientific career. Instead of fighting the overwhelming input, she tried to analyze it. She noticed patterns in the lights, rhythms in the sounds. Her scientific mind began treating the torture device like a complex puzzle to be solved. After an hour, Zethkar stopped the machine. Lisa was exhausted but still conscious and alert. The Vorthak officers murmured among themselves with what sounded like concern. "Impressive," Zethkar admitted grudgingly. "Most subjects are unconscious within minutes, but this was only the beginning." Over. The following days, Lisa was subjected to increasingly harsh tests. She was forced to solve puzzles while subjected to extreme temperatures. She had to maintain concentration while loud sounds and bright lights bombarded her senses. Each test was designed to find her breaking point. But Lisa approached every challenge the same way, as a scientific problem to be studied and understood. She began to recognize that the tests themselves revealed important information about Vorthak psychology. They were obsessed with finding and exploiting weakness in others. More importantly, she realized that her refusal to break was starting to disturb her captors. Zethkar's confidence was being replaced by frustration and confusion. He had expected her to fail quickly, proving human inferiority. Instead, she was demonstrating a kind of strength he did not understand. During her few hours of rest each day, Lisa made careful notes in a hidden journal. She documented everything she observed about Vorthak behavior, culture, and psychology. She was learning their language by listening to conversations between guards. Most importantly, she was beginning to understand the fear that drove their need to dominate others. The Vorthak Empire was built on a simple philosophy: prove strength by breaking others. But what happened when someone refused to be broken? Lisa was about to find out. On the 7th day of testing, Commander Zethkar came to her cell earlier than usual. His yellow eyes were bloodshot, and his movements seemed agitated. "You continue to resist," he said, studying her face for signs of weakness. My superiors are beginning to ask questions about why one small human female cannot be broken by standard methods. Lisa looked up at him calmly. Perhaps the methods are not as effective as you believed. Or perhaps, Zethkar said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, it is time to try methods that are not standard. He leaned closer to the bars of her cell. Tomorrow, we begin your real education. I will show you torments that have shattered the minds of beings far stronger than any human. When I am finished, you will beg for death. Lisa met his gaze without flinching. I will continue to learn, Commander. That is what scientists do. As Zethkar walked away, Lisa could see that her calm responses were having an effect he had not expected. Instead of breaking her, the tests were beginning to break his confidence in his own methods. She was starting to understand something important about the Vorthak Empire and its warriors. They were not as strong as they pretended to be. Commander Zethkar's obsession with breaking Lisa had become the talk of the Vorthak military complex. Other officers whispered in the corridors about the human female who refused to surrender. Some found it amusing, others disturbing. None of them had ever seen their commander so focused on a single prisoner. Lisa's isolation became complete on the 10th day. Zethkar moved her to a special facility deep underground, away from the other human diplomats. The new cell had no windows and no contact with the outside world. The only sounds were the hum of machinery and the distant echoes of Vorthak voices speaking in their harsh language. Now, we begin your true education, Zethkar announced as he sealed the cell door. No more games, no more simple tests. You will face the same methods we use to break the minds of enemy commanders and resistance leaders. The first torture was designed to attack her sense of time and reality. The lights in her cell would change randomly from blinding brightness to complete darkness. Sometimes the transitions happened every few minutes, sometimes every few hours. There was no pattern, no way to predict or prepare for the changes. Sleep became impossible. Lisa would drift off during a dark period, only to be jolted awake by sudden, painful light. During bright periods, she would try to rest her eyes only to be plunged into darkness so complete she could not see her own hands. But Lisa had studied sensory deprivation techniques during her scientific training. She knew that the human brain would create its own patterns when external stimuli became chaotic. Instead of fighting the confusion, she used it as an opportunity to organize her thoughts and memories. During dark periods, she mentally reviewed everything she had learned about Vorthak culture. During bright periods, she practiced meditation techniques Dr. Brooks had taught her. She turned the torture chamber into a laboratory for studying her own mental responses to stress. On the 3rd day of light torture, Zethkar added sound to the torment. Speakers hidden in the walls played recordings of Vorthak victory chants mixed with the screams of their defeated enemies. The volume would surge and fade unpredictably, creating a constant state of auditory assault. Lisa listened carefully to the recordings. Between the battle cries and screams, she began to pick out words and phrases in the Vorthak language. She was learning more about their culture from these torture recordings than from any formal diplomatic exchange. The victory chants revealed something important. The Vorthak did not celebrate conquest for its own sake. They celebrated the breaking of enemy spirits. Their songs were about humiliation and domination, not simple military victory. This told Lisa that psychological warfare was more important to them than physical destruction. After a week of sensory torture, Zethkar changed tactics again. He brought Lisa to a new chamber where the walls were covered with screens showing images from her own memories. Somehow, the Vorthak had extracted scenes from her past and were projecting them around her. She saw her childhood home on Earth, her parents working in their garden, her first day at university. But the images were wrong, twisted into scenes of destruction and death. Her family's faces were replaced with looks of disappointment and betrayal. Her achievements became failures. Her successes turned to ashes. "This is your life, human," Zethkar's voice echoed from hidden speakers. "This is the truth of what you are. Everything you think you accomplished was meaningless. Everyone you love will forget you. You will die here alone and broken, and the universe will not notice your passing." Lisa closed her eyes and focused on her real memories. She remembered Dr. Brooks teaching her that false images could not overwrite true experiences unless the victim allowed them to do so. The Vorthak technology was impressive, but it could not actually change what had happened in her past. "These are not my memories," she said aloud, though she did not know if anyone was listening. "They are your fears projected onto my life. You fear being forgotten, being meaningless. That is why you work so hard to make others remember their defeat." The images flickered and changed, becoming more violent and disturbing, but Lisa had identified the source of their power over her, and that knowledge made them easier to resist. Days blended together in the underground facility. Zethkar appeared regularly to check on her progress, expecting to find her broken and begging for mercy. Instead, he found her sitting calmly in meditation, or quietly exercising to maintain her physical strength, or working on mathematical problems in her head to keep her mind sharp. "Why do you not break?" he demanded during one visit, his frustration clearly visible. "I have used these methods on warriors with decades of combat experience. I have shattered the minds of beings who conquered entire solar systems. What makes you different?" Lisa looked up at him with genuine curiosity. "Perhaps the difference is not in me, but in them. Warriors and conquerors define themselves by their strength and achievements. When you take those away, they have nothing left. But I am a scientist. My strength comes from understanding, not from conquering." "Understanding?" Zethkar's laugh was bitter. "What good is understanding when you are trapped and helpless? What can your knowledge do against superior force?" "It helps me see that you are afraid," Lisa replied calmly. "Everything you do, every torture you design, comes from fear. You are afraid that if you stop proving your strength for even a moment, others will see that you are not as powerful as you pretend to be." Zethkar's claws extended with a sharp, clicking sound. For a moment, Lisa thought he might kill her on the spot. Instead, he turned and stalked out of the chamber without another word. The torture continued for another week, but something had changed. Zethkar's visits became less frequent and more agitated. The torture devices were adjusted more often, as if he was searching desperately for the right combination to finally break her resistance. Lisa began to realize that her refusal to break was having an unexpected effect on her captor. Zethkar had built his entire identity around his ability to crush the spirits of others. Her continued resistance was challenging everything he believed about himself and his people. During one particularly harsh session, involving extreme temperature, Changes and disorienting chemicals pumped into the air, Lisa made a breakthrough in understanding Vorthak psychology. The torture methods were not just about breaking prisoners. They were about reinforcing the torturer's sense of power and control. Every time a victim broke, it confirmed to the Vorthak that they were superior beings. Every scream and plea for mercy fed their need to feel dominant. But what happened when someone refused to play that role? What happened when the victim became the observer, studying the torturer instead of being destroyed by them? Lisa began to see that she was not just resisting torture. She was conducting the most important psychological study of her career. Every method Zethkar used revealed more about Vorthak fears and insecurities. Every frustrated reaction from her captor provided data about their cultural weaknesses. The revelation gave her a new sense of purpose. She was no longer just surviving the torture. She was gathering intelligence that could help humanity understand and deal with this aggressive species. Her suffering had meaning beyond simple endurance. On the 20th day of her isolation, Zethkar arrived with a new device that Lisa had not seen before. It was smaller than the other torture machines, but something about it made the commander's eyes glow with anticipation. "This is a Vorthak mind probe," he announced, setting the device on a table beside her restraint chair. "It will reach into your consciousness and extract every thought, every memory, every secret you have ever harbored. When it is finished, you will have no privacy left, no hidden thoughts to protect your sanity." He attached the device to her head, with metal contacts that felt cold against her skin. "And then, human scientist, I will broadcast every humiliating detail of your broken mind to your fellow diplomats. They will see exactly what happens to those who think they can resist the Vorthak Empire." Lisa felt the device begin to hum with energy. She could sense it probing at the edges of her consciousness, trying to force its way into her thoughts. But instead of fighting it or trying to hide her memories, she did something that Zethkar did not expect. She opened her mind completely, letting the device see everything she had learned about Vorthak psychology during her captivity. She showed it her analysis of their fear-based culture, her observations about their need to dominate others, and her growing understanding of their deepest insecurities. The mind probe was designed to extract secrets and create shame. Instead, it found a scientific mind that had been studying its captors with clinical precision. It discovered thoughts and observations that cut to the heart of Vorthak society's fundamental weaknesses. Zethkar watched the readouts with growing confusion, then alarm, then something approaching terror. The device was not breaking the human's mind. It was revealing that she had been analyzing him and his entire species with the same detached precision she might use to study bacteria. For the first time since her capture, Lisa smiled. "Did you find what you were looking for, Commander?" Commander Zethkar stared at the mind probe's readings in stunned silence. The device had been designed to strip away every defense and leave its victims as broken, empty shells. Instead, it had revealed the most organized and analytical mind he had ever encountered. Every torture session, every attempt at humiliation had been cataloged and studied like data in a scientific experiment. 3 weeks of intensive psychological warfare had not broken the human female. She had turned his torture chamber into a research laboratory and him into an unwitting test subject. The realization filled him with a rage unlike anything he had ever experienced. "You think you are clever?" he snarled, ripping the mind probe contacts from her head. "You think your little observations make you superior to the Vorthak Empire? I will show you how wrong you are." Zethkar's failure to break Lisa had become an embarrassment that threatened his position. Other commanders whispered that perhaps humans were stronger than they appeared. Some suggested that different methods might be needed to deal with this new species. Worst of all, his superiors were beginning to question his competence. The commander made a decision that would either restore his reputation or destroy it completely. He called for a formal assembly of the Vorthak High Command to witness the final breaking of the human prisoner. Every important military leader on the planet would attend to see him crush this defiant creature once and for all. Lisa was brought to the Grand Assembly Hall in chains, though she had never attempted to escape or resist physically. The chains were symbolic, meant to show the gathered Vorthak leaders that she was completely under Zethkar's control. The hall was massive, with tiered seating that rose up like the inside of a volcano. Hundreds of Vorthak officers sat in perfect military order, their yellow eyes glowing with anticipation. At the center of the chamber stood an execution platform where condemned prisoners traditionally met their end. Zethkar took his place at the podium while Lisa was forced to stand in chains at the center of the platform. The symbolism was clear. This human would serve as an example to her entire species of what happened to those who dared to resist the Vorthak Empire. "Fellow warriors," Zethkar began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "for 3 weeks I have worked to break the spirit of this human female. She has resisted our methods through some combination of stubbornness and ignorance. Today she will learn that resistance is futile." He gestured toward Lisa with contempt. "This creature believes that her species is special, that humans possess some quality that makes them different from the countless others we have conquered. Today we will prove that humans are just as weak and pathetic as every other inferior race." The assembled officers murmured their approval. Many had fought in the campaigns that conquered dozens of other species. They had seen this ritual performed many times before. First came the public humiliation, then the formal surrender, and, finally, the execution that sealed the fate of another defeated people. But as Zethkar continued his speech, Lisa did something unexpected. She began to laugh. The sound was soft at first, almost inaudible over the commander's booming voice, but it grew stronger, filling the moments of silence between his words. The laughter was not hysterical or broken. It was the sound of someone who had just understood a joke that nobody else could see. Zethkar stopped speaking and stared at her in confusion. "You find your approaching death amusing, human?" Lisa looked up at him with clear, calm eyes. "I find it amusing that you still do not understand what has happened here, Commander. You have spent 3 weeks trying to break me, but you have only succeeded in breaking yourselves." "Silence!" Zethkar roared, but Lisa continued speaking. "Every torture session taught me more about your psychology than you learned about mine. Every attempt to humiliate me revealed your own deep fears and insecurities. You call other species weak, but you are the ones who are truly fragile." The hall erupted in angry shouts and demands for the human's immediate execution. But Lisa's voice carried clearly over the noise, trained by years of lecturing to hostile academic audiences. "Your entire civilization is built on a foundation of terror," she continued. "You conquer others not because you are strong, but because you are afraid. You break their spirits because you know that if they ever stopped fearing you, they would see what you really are." Zethkar drew his energy weapon, its blade crackling with deadly power. "Enough of your lies and psychological tricks. You will die now, and your death will be broadcast to every human world as a warning." "Truth is not a psychological trick," Lisa replied calmly. "The truth is that you are a species of broken children, passing your trauma from one generation to the next. You hurt others because you were hurt. You break others because you are broken. Some of the officers in the audience began to shift, uncomfortably. Lisa's words were cutting deeper than any physical weapon could reach. She was describing things about their society that they had never dared to examine too closely. You want to know why I did not break under your torture? Lisa continued. It is because I understand what torture really is. It is not about gathering information or changing behavior. It is about the torturer trying to externalize their own pain by making others suffer. Zethkar raised his weapon, but something in Lisa's steady gaze made him hesitate. She showed no fear, no desperation. She looked at him with the same clinical interest she might show toward a specimen under a microscope. Every species you have conquered shared one weakness, Lisa said. They defined themselves by their strength, their achievements, their superiority over others. When you took those things away, they had nothing left. But I am a scientist. My identity comes from understanding, not from dominating. She turned to address the entire assembly, ignoring the weapon pointed at her heart. You cannot break someone whose strength comes from seeing clearly. And I see you very clearly now, Vorthak. You are not conquerors. You are victims who never learned to heal from your wounds. The hall had fallen completely silent. Hundreds of hardened warriors sat frozen, listening to words that challenged everything they believed about themselves and their empire. Your military might is impressive, Lisa continued. Your technology is advanced. Your organization is efficient. But underneath all of that power, you are still the frightened, traumatized beings you were when your own civilization was forged in violence and pain. Zethkar's weapon trembled in his grip. Stop talking, he whispered. The cycle can be broken, Lisa said gently. Pain does not have to create more pain. Trauma does not have to be passed down forever. There is another way to be strong, I said. Stop! Zethkar screamed, but his voice cracked like a much younger being. I know you are afraid, Lisa said, speaking directly to him now. I know you feel lost and empty when you are not hurting someone else. I know you lie awake wondering if you are really as strong as you pretend to be. The answer is that you could be stronger than you have ever imagined, but only if you stop trying to prove your strength by breaking others. The weapon fell from Zethkar's hand and clattered on the platform. For the first time in his adult life, the proud Vorthak commander felt tears burning in his yellow eyes. You want to break me? Lisa asked softly. Then break the cycle. Choose to be something other than what your pain has made you. That would be true strength. The silence in the hall stretched for long minutes. Then, one by one, Vorthak officers began to stand and walk out. Some looked shaken, others angry, but all of them had been changed by what they had heard. Zethkar stood alone on the platform with his prisoner, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. Everything he had, believed about strength and weakness, about power and submission, lay in ruins around him. What have you done to me? He whispered. I have shown you the truth, Lisa replied. What you do with it is up to you. The execution that was supposed to demonstrate Vorthak's superiority had become something else entirely. Lisa Grant, the human scientist who was supposed to die as an example to her species, had instead held up a mirror to an entire civilization and forced them to see their own reflection. The consequences of that moment would reshape the galaxy. The Vorthak High Command fell into chaos after Lisa's speech. Officers who had walked out of the assembly hall gathered in small groups throughout the military complex, arguing in hushed voices about what they had witnessed. Some demanded immediate action to restore order and discipline. Others seemed lost in thought, as if seeing their world clearly for the first time. Commander Zeth Carr remained on the execution platform long after the hall had emptied, staring at Lisa with a mixture of confusion and something that might have been terror. The woman who was supposed to be his broken victim stood calmly in her chains, watching him with the same analytical interest she had shown throughout her captivity. "You are free to kill me now," Lisa said quietly. "No one is watching. No one will know if you choose revenge over reflection." Zethkar looked down at the energy weapon he had dropped. Its blade had gone dark, reflecting his own inner state. For 3 weeks, he had poured every technique of psychological torture. He knew into breaking this human female. Instead, she had turned his weapons against him and shattered something fundamental inside his mind. "I do not understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. What did you do to me?" "I showed you your reflection," Lisa replied. "Sometimes that is the most painful thing anyone can experience." The commander's hands shook as he picked up his weapon. But instead of activating the blade, he used it to cut through Lisa's chains. The metal bonds fell away, leaving her standing free on the platform where she was supposed to have died. "Why?" Zethkar asked. "Why did you not break? Every being has a breaking point. I have found them all." Lisa rubbed her wrists where the chains had chafed her skin. "Perhaps you found their breaking points because you were looking for them. When you approach someone expecting them to break, you focus on their weaknesses instead of their strengths." "Strength?" Zethkar repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. "I thought I understood strength. I thought it meant being able to destroy enemies and crush resistance." "That is one kind of strength," Lisa agreed. "But there are others. The strength to endure without breaking. The strength to understand your enemies instead of simply defeating them. The strength to choose mercy when you have the power to choose revenge." Zethkar staggered to a bench at the edge of the platform and sat down heavily. His massive frame seemed to collapse in on itself as if some internal structure had been removed. "Everything I believed, everything I was taught, was designed to create soldiers for an empire built on conquest," Lisa finished. "But empires built on fear and domination always fall eventually. They consume themselves when they run out of others to conquer." The truth of her words hit Zethkar like a physical blow. The Vorthak Empire had been expanding for centuries, always finding new species to conquer and break. But what would happen when they controlled the entire galaxy? What would they do with their need to dominate when there were no more enemies left to defeat? "You said the cycle could be broken," Zethkar said, looking up at her with desperate hope. "How? How does a being like me learn to be something different?" Lisa studied his face carefully. She could see the genuine anguish behind his question, the pain of someone whose entire identity had been stripped away in a single moment of clarity. "It starts with acknowledging the damage," she said. "Both the damage that was done to you and the damage you have done to others. Then it requires choosing to respond differently than you were taught." "The damage done to me?" Zethkar's voice was confused. "No species becomes this focused on dominance and breaking others without having been broken themselves first," Lisa explained. "What happened to your people to make them this way? What trauma did they experience that they have been passing down through generations?" Zethkar was quiet for a long time, thinking about things he had never been encouraged to examine. "The Great Shattering," he said finally. "Thousands of years ago, our world was invaded by machines, artificial intelligences that had destroyed their creators and sought to eliminate all organic life." Lisa listened carefully as he continued. "We fought them for centuries. They captured our people and used psychological torture to turn them into weapons against their own kind. Families were forced to choose between watching their children die or killing their neighbors. Communities were destroyed not by weapons, but by being made to destroy themselves." "And when the machines were finally defeated," Lisa asked, "we swore it would never happen again. We decided that we would be the ones to break others before they could break us. We would be the predators instead of the prey." Zethkar's voice grew quieter. "But we never stopped being afraid. We just started making others afraid instead." Lisa felt a deep sadness for this broken species that had turned their trauma into a weapon against the galaxy. "The machines may have been destroyed, but they achieved their goal," she said. "They turned your people into something that destroys others the same way you were once destroyed." The realization seemed to physically hurt Zethkar. He doubled over as if someone had struck him in the stomach. "We became them," he whispered. "We became the thing we fought against. Yes," Lisa said gently. "But unlike machines, organic beings can choose to change. You can decide to be something different." As they talked, neither of them noticed the small surveillance device hidden in the chamber's ceiling. The conversation was being recorded and transmitted to Vorthak military intelligence, where analysts struggled to understand what they were witnessing. The discussion between captor and prisoner had become something unprecedented in Vorthak history, a moment of genuine self-reflection and potential transformation. Some intelligence officers wanted to suppress the recording immediately. Others argued that it should be studied to understand this new threat to imperial stability. While the debate raged in government offices, the recording began to circulate through unofficial channels. Younger Vorthak officers, those who had not yet been completely hardened by decades of warfare, watched with growing fascination as their feared commander admitted to fundamental flaws in their civilization. Back in the assembly hall, Lisa and Zethkar continued their conversation as the implications of her words rippled outward through Vorthak society. She had not simply resisted their torture methods. She had introduced a virus of doubt and self-awareness into a culture that depended on absolute certainty about their own superiority. "If we chose to change," Zethkar asked hesitantly, "would your species accept us? Would humans be willing to work with former enemies?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "Humans have a long history of conflict among ourselves," she said. "We have learned that former enemies can become trusted allies when they genuinely commit to change. But trust must be earned, not simply declared." "How?" Zethkar asked. "By actions, not words. By choosing to help rather than harm when you have the power to do either. By protecting the weak instead of preying on them. By building something positive instead of just destroying what others have built." The commander stood up slowly, looking around the empty hall where he had planned to execute this remarkable human. "My superiors will not accept such changes easily. Many of my people are too deeply committed to the old ways." "Change never happens all at once," Lisa said. "It begins with individuals making different choices. Those choices inspire others, who inspire others in turn. Eventually, enough people choose change that the old systems cannot maintain themselves. Zethkar picked up his weapon and looked at it thoughtfully. For his entire adult life, it had been a symbol of his power and authority. Now it seemed like a relic from a darker age. "I do not know if I can be the kind of being you describe," he said honestly. "The old patterns are deeply ingrained in me. The fact that you are willing to question those patterns is a beginning," Lisa replied. "Healing from trauma is not quick or easy, but it is possible." As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of marching feet echoed through the corridors. Outside the hall, a company of Vorthak guards was approaching, sent by commanders who had decided that this dangerous conversation needed to end. Zethkar heard them coming and turned to Lisa with a mixture of regret and determination. "They will not let this continue. My superiors have decided that you are too dangerous to live." "Perhaps," Lisa said calmly, "but the ideas you have heard today will survive even if I do not. Ideas cannot be killed with weapons." The guards burst into the hall with their weapons drawn, expecting to find their commander torturing his prisoner. Instead, they found him standing beside her like a protector rather than a captor. "Commander Zethkar," their leader announced, "you are ordered to execute the prisoner immediately and report to Supreme Command for debriefing." Zethkar looked at his weapon, then at Lisa, then at the soldiers who had served under him for years. For the first time in his life, he had to choose between following orders and following his conscience. The choice he made would determine not only Lisa's fate, but the future of the Vorthak Empire itself. Commander Zethkar stood frozen between his weapon and his conscience as the Vorthak guards waited for him to follow orders. The moment stretched into eternity, filled with the weight of a choice that would define not only his own fate, but potentially the future of his entire species. Lisa watched him calmly, showing no fear, even though she stood surrounded by armed soldiers who had been ordered to kill her. She had seen something in Zethkar during their conversation that gave her hope, but she also understood the enormous pressure he faced to conform to a lifetime of conditioning. "Commander," the guard captain repeated impatiently, "you are ordered to execute the prisoner immediately." Zethkar's hand tightened on his weapon, but instead of raising it toward Lisa, he turned to face his own soldiers. "No," he said quietly. The simple word fell like a stone into still water, creating ripples that would spread far beyond this moment. The guards stared at their commander in shock, unable to process what they had just heard. "Sir?" the captain asked, certain he had misunderstood. "I said no," Zethkar repeated, his voice growing stronger. "I will not execute this prisoner. She is under my protection now." "Commander, you are not thinking clearly," another guard said desperately. "This human has obviously used some kind of mind control technique on you. We can help you resist whatever influence she has placed on you." Zethkar almost laughed at the irony. His soldiers thought Lisa had brainwashed him, when in reality she had helped him think clearly for the first time in his adult life. "She has not controlled my mind," he said. "She has freed it." The guards exchanged worried glances. Their commander had clearly been compromised somehow, but they were not sure how to handle the situation. Zethkar was a legendary figure in the Mai, Vorthak military, decorated with honors from dozens of successful campaigns. The idea of arresting him was almost unthinkable. "Step aside, Commander," the captain said reluctantly. "If you cannot perform your duty, we will complete the execution ourselves." Zethkar moved to stand directly in front of Lisa, his massive frame blocking the soldier's line of fire. If you wish to harm her, you will have to go through me first. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for the sound of explosions, echoing from somewhere high above them. The entire building shook as emergency alarms began to wail throughout the complex. "What is that?" the guard captain demanded, speaking into his communication device. The response crackled through static. "Human rescue ships have breached our orbital defenses. They are attacking the government complex. All units are ordered to defensive positions. Immediately." Lisa felt a surge of hope mixed with concern. Captain Murphy and the crew of the Odyssey had clearly come to rescue the diplomatic team, but they were facing impossible odds against the entire Vorthak fleet. "Your friends have come to save you," Zethkar observed. "They must care about you greatly to attempt such a hopeless mission." Another explosion, closer this time, made dust fall from the ceiling. The guards looked torn between following their original orders and responding to the immediate threat to their base. "Captain," one of them said urgently, "we should get to our defensive positions. The human ships will be destroyed within minutes," the captain replied coldly. "Our first priority is eliminating this dangerous prisoner before she can be rescued." He raised his weapon toward Lisa, but Zethkar was faster. The commander's energy blade flared to life, cutting through the guard's rifle before he could fire. The weapon fell to the floor in two pieces, sparking and smoking. "I warned you," Zethkar said, his voice carrying the authority of his rank and reputation. "She is under my protection." The remaining guards hesitated, caught between their orders and their instinctive respect for their legendary commander. In that moment of uncertainty, Lisa made a decision that surprised everyone in the room. "Commander Zethkar," she said formally, "I request political asylum with you and any Vorthak who choose to reject the old ways of your empire." The request was unprecedented in galactic history. No member of a species under attack had ever sought protection from individuals within the attacking force. But Lisa understood that this moment represented a unique opportunity to create something new. Zethkar turned to look at her with amazement. "You would trust me to protect you? After everything I have done?" "You have shown that you can choose to be different," Lisa replied. "That choice makes all the difference." The building shook again as human ships pressed their attack against impossible odds. Over the communication system, reports flooded in of coordinated strikes against multiple Vorthak installations. The rescue mission was larger and more aggressive than anyone had expected. "This is madness," the guard captain muttered. "Commander, these humans are attacking our homeworld. They are our enemies." "No," Zethkar said, his voice filled with new understanding. "We made them our enemies by treating them as such, but it does not have to continue that way." He activated his personal communication device and sent out a signal on all military frequencies. "This is Commander Zethkar to all Vorthak forces. I am calling for an immediate ceasefire. The human prisoner Lisa Grant is under my personal protection, and I am requesting a truce to prevent further bloodshed." The response was immediate and furious. Multiple commanders screamed at him through the communication system, accusing him of treason and demanding that he stand down. But there were other voices, too. Younger officers who had heard recordings of Lisa's speech, soldiers who had begun to question the endless cycle of conquest and domination. "Commander?" came a voice Lisa recognized as belonging to one of the officers who had walked out of the assembly hall. "This is Captain Thane. My unit stands with you. We are tired of being the galaxy's monsters." "This is Lieutenant Corvex," another voice added. "My squadron requests permission to escort the human ships to safety." More voices joined in, creating a chorus of dissent that spread through the Vorthak military network. Not all of them supported Zethkar's decision, but enough did to create confusion and conflict within their own forces. The guard captain stared at his communication device in horror as he listened to the growing rebellion within his own military. "What have you done?" he asked Zethkar in a whisper. "I have given them permission to choose," Zethkar replied. "Something we have not been allowed to do for centuries." Through the building's emergency communication system, a new voice could be heard, one that Lisa recognized with relief and joy. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the Earth Vessel Odyssey," came the transmission. "We are here to retrieve our diplomatic team. We do not wish to harm civilians, but we will not leave without our people." Zethkar looked at Lisa questioningly. She nodded her consent, and he responded to the human captain. "Captain Murphy, this is Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak Imperial Guard. I have your diplomat Lisa Grant with me, and she is unharmed. I request permission to escort her to your ship personally, along with any Vorthak who wish to seek asylum with your people." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of distant weapons fire as the battle continued around them. Finally, Captain Murphy's voice returned, filled with suspicion and confusion. "Commander, forgive my skepticism, but this could be a trap. How do I know you are acting in good faith?" "Because," Lisa said, taking Zethkar's communication device, "he has just committed an act of treason against his own empire to protect me. Captain, there are Vorthak here who want to choose a different path. We need to give them that chance." The explosions were getting closer, and the guard captain was speaking urgently into his own device, calling for reinforcements to stop what he saw as an act of ultimate betrayal. Zethkar made one final choice that would seal his fate forever. He destroyed the main security console that controlled the building's defensive systems, creating a clear path for the human rescue ships to reach them. "Now we run," he told Lisa. "And we hope that your people are as forgiving as you believe them to be." As they fled through corridors filled with smoke and alarm sirens, Lisa realized that something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in galactic history, members of a conquering species were choosing to side with their former victims. The rescue mission had become something much more significant, the first step toward healing wounds that had festered for generations. The escape through the Vorthak government complex became a chaotic race against time as Lisa and Zethkar navigated corridors filled with smoke and confusion. Behind them, loyal guards pursued with weapons drawn, while ahead, the sound of human. Rescue ships grew louder as they fought their way through the building's defenses. Zethkar led Lisa through passages she had never seen during her captivity, moving with the confident stride of someone who knew every corner of the massive structure. But Lisa could see the strain in his movements, the weight of his decision pressing down on him with each step. "There is no going back from this," he said, as they paused at an intersection to avoid a patrol of guards rushing toward the main battle. "I have betrayed everything I was taught to believe in." "You have chosen to believe in something better," Lisa replied. "That is not betrayal, that is growth." They reached a hangar bay where several small Vorthak transport ships sat unused. Through the massive opening, Lisa could see human fighters engaged in aerial combat with Vorthak interceptors. The sky was filled with energy weapons fire and the trails of damaged vessels limping away from the battle. "Captain Murphy," Zethkar spoke into his communicator, "we are in Hangar Bay 7. Can you reach us?" "We're taking heavy fire, but we're on our way," came the reply. "Is the package secure?" "The package is fine and eager to go home," Lisa said, taking the device. Jake, I have someone with me who needs asylum. He saved my life. The response was immediate and filled with concern. Lisa, are you sure about this? We cannot afford to take prisoners right now. He is not a prisoner, Lisa insisted. He is a defector who chose to protect me instead of following orders to kill me. We owe him sanctuary. Before Captain Murphy could respond, energy bolts began striking the hangar around them. The guards who had been pursuing them had finally caught up, and they were not interested in taking prisoners alive. Zethkar pushed Lisa behind one of the transport ships for cover, then returned fire with his own weapon. His shots were precise and controlled, designed to force the guards back rather than kill them. Even now, you show mercy to those who would kill you, Lisa observed as they crouched behind the ship's landing gear. They are following orders, just as I did for so many years, Zethkar replied. I cannot blame them for doing what they were taught to do. The sound of human engines grew louder, and suddenly a sleek Earth fighter appeared in the hangar opening. It was smaller than the Vorthak ships, but moved with incredible agility, dodging defensive fire as it swept into the bay. The fighter's side hatch opened, revealing Captain Murphy himself, along with two other human soldiers. Lisa, he called out over the noise of weapons fire. We need to move now. Lisa started toward the ship, but Zethkar hesitated. The reality of what he was doing seemed to hit him all at once. He was abandoning his homeworld, his people, everything he had ever known. Commander, Lisa said gently, there are other Vorthak who will follow your example, but someone has to take the first step. What if I am wrong? He asked. What if this choice leads to nothing but destruction for both our species? What if you are right? Lisa countered. What if this is the beginning of something better than either of our peoples have ever imagined? More guards appeared at the hangar entrance, forcing Zethkar to make his final decision. He could surrender now and face whatever punishment his superiors deemed appropriate, or he could trust in the possibility that Lisa represented. He chose trust. Together, they ran across the open hangar toward the human fighter as energy bolts sizzled through the air around them. Captain Murphy provided covering fire, while his soldiers helped pull them aboard the cramped vessel. Go, go, go! Murphy shouted to the pilot as soon as everyone was inside. The fighter shot out of the hangar, like a missile, climbing rapidly through the chaos of the aerial battle. Lisa pressed her face to a small viewport and watched the Vorthak homeworld fall away below them. Somewhere down there, the seeds of change had been planted. Whether they would grow or be destroyed remained to be seen. The Odyssey is waiting, at the edge of the system, Captain Murphy explained as they flew. We have the other diplomats safe, but we have taken casualties. The Vorthak fleet is formidable. Lisa looked at Zethkar, who sat quietly in his harness, staring at nothing. She could only imagine what he was feeling as he watched his home world disappear behind them. Captain, she said, some Vorthak units declared their support for a ceasefire. They may be willing to help negotiate an end to this battle. Murphy looked skeptical. Lisa, I know you want to believe the best of people, but we are talking about the species that was torturing you for 3 weeks. How do we know this is not an elaborate trap? Because he could have killed me at any time, Lisa replied, indicating Zethkar. Instead, he chose to protect me from his own soldiers. That choice cost him everything he had. As if responding to her words, Zethkar's communicator crackled to life with transmissions from the planet below. Vorthak commanders were shouting contradictory orders, some demanding that the human ships be destroyed, others calling for the ceasefire that Zethkar had requested. This is Captain Thane, came a voice Lisa recognized. All units under my command are standing down. We will not fire on human vessels that are withdrawing from the system." "This is Admiral Korvax," another voice added. "The Second Fleet is implementing an immediate ceasefire. We request that human forces do the same." Captain Murphy listened to the transmissions with growing amazement. "Are they really splitting into factions over this?" "Ideas are powerful weapons," Lisa said. "Sometimes they can accomplish what military force cannot." The human fighter reached the Odyssey without further incident, protected by the growing number of Vorthak ships that had declared neutrality or support for the ceasefire. As they docked with the larger vessel, Lisa felt overwhelming relief at being back among her own people. But she also felt a sense of responsibility. The events of the past few hours had created an opportunity that might not come again for generations. Two species that had been on the brink of war now had a chance to find a different path forward. Dr. Amy Brooks was waiting in the docking bay when they disembarked. She embraced Lisa warmly, then stepped back to study her face with professional concern. "How are you holding up?" she asked. 3 weeks of captivity and torture. That would break most people." "I am intact," Lisa replied. "Changed, but intact. And I learned something important about our new neighbors." She gestured toward Zethkar, who stood uncertainly beside the human fighter. Several Earth soldiers had their weapons trained on him, unsure whether he represented a threat or an opportunity. "This is Commander Zethkar," Lisa announced. "He chose to protect me instead of killing me, and he helped me escape from his own people. I have promised him sanctuary among us." Dr. Brooks studied the massive alien warrior with clinical interest. "Commander, you understand that your presence here creates certain complications for us." "I understand," Zethkar replied in careful English. "I have betrayed my own species to save one human female. Many of your people will see me as an enemy who cannot be trusted. But some will see you as proof that change is possible," Lisa added. "And right now, that possibility is more valuable than all the weapons in both our fleets." Captain Murphy approached them with a communication pad in his hand. "Lisa, I am getting reports from all over the Vorthak system. Their military appears to be splitting into at least 3 factions. Those who want to continue fighting, those who support the ceasefire, and those who are demanding immediate negotiations with us. What does Earth Command want us to do?" Lisa asked. "They want us to return home immediately with whatever intelligence we have gathered," Murphy replied. "But they also want to know if this ceasefire offers a genuine opportunity for peace." Lisa looked at Zethkar, who was staring out through the docking bay's viewing ports at his distant homeworld. She could see ships moving in strange patterns around the planet, some grouping together while others held isolated positions. The Vorthak Empire was experiencing its first internal crisis in centuries. "The opportunity is real," she said firmly, "but it will require courage from both sides to make it work." As the Odyssey prepared to leave the Vorthak system, Lisa began to understand that her ordeal had been more than just a personal test of endurance. It had become the catalyst for something much larger, the first genuine possibility of peace between species that had seemed destined for war. The real work was just beginning. 2 years had passed since the dramatic rescue from the Vorthak homeworld, and the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Lisa Grant stood before a mixed audience of humans and Vorthak in the newly constructed Diplomatic Institute on Earth's moon, delivering a lecture that would have been impossible to imagine just a few years earlier. The Institute had become a symbol of the transformation that had begun in a torture chamber and spread across multiple star systems. What started as one human's refusal to be broken had evolved into a new field of study that was reshaping how species understood each other. The Grant method of xenopsychological analysis, Lisa explained to her students, is based on the principle that aggressive behavior often stems from unresolved trauma within a species' collective history. By understanding this trauma, we can address the root causes of conflict rather than simply responding to their symptoms. In the front row, a young Vorthak officer named Kren raised his hand. He was one of dozens who had followed Zethkar's example, seeking asylum with humans and helping to build bridges between their peoples. "Dr. Grant," Kren asked in accented English, "how do we convince those who remain loyal to the old empire that change is possible? Many of our people still see defectors like us as traitors who have abandoned our strength." Lisa smiled at the question that had dominated her work for the past 2 years. Change begins with individuals, but it spreads through demonstration. Every successful partnership between humans and reformed Vorthak proves that cooperation is stronger than domination. She gestured to a display showing star charts marked with new settlements and joint research facilities. "Look at what we have accomplished together. The Kepler Research Station, where human and Vorthak scientists work side by side. The New Harmony Colony, where families from both species have built a community based on mutual respect. The Trauma Recovery Centers, where Vorthak veterans learn to heal from centuries of conditioning. The transformation had not been easy or universal. The Vorthak Empire had indeed split into factions, just as Lisa had predicted. The hardline traditionalists, calling themselves the Pure Empire, had retreated to distant sectors and continued their aggressive expansion. The moderate faction, led by officers like Captain Thane, had established the reformed territories and begun experimenting with peaceful coexistence. And a growing number of individual Vorthak had chosen to leave their species entirely, seeking new lives among humans and other peaceful species. The human reaction had been mixed as well. Many Earth citizens struggled to accept former enemies as potential allies. Fear and mistrust ran deep on both sides, requiring constant work to overcome. But the success stories provided hope and momentum for continued progress. After the lecture, Lisa walked through the Institute's corridors toward her private office. The walls were lined with awards and recognition from various galactic organizations, but she took more pride in the simple thank you letters from individuals whose lives had been changed by her work. She found Alex Carter waiting in her office, reviewing reports from the latest diplomatic missions. He had become her partner in both work and life, helping to coordinate the complex logistics of interspecies cooperation. Their relationship had grown from shared purpose into something deeper and more personal. "How did the presentation go?" Alex asked, looking up from his data pad. "Better each time," Lisa replied. "The students are asking more sophisticated questions. Both species are starting to think beyond their old assumptions." Alex nodded toward a communication device on her desk that was blinking with incoming messages. "You have been getting a lot of requests for consultation. The Andromedan Council wants you to mediate their dispute with the Spiral Federation. The Centauri Alliance is asking for help with their integration problems." Lisa sat down at her desk and scrolled through the messages. Word of the human-Vorthak reconciliation had spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring hope among species that had given up on peaceful solutions to their conflicts. "And this one," Alex said, highlighting a particular message, "might interest you personally." Lisa opened the communication and saw a familiar face on the screen. It was Captain Thane, now leader of the reformed territories, calling from his flagship in orbit around the Vorthak homeworld. "Dr. Grant," his recorded message began, "I wanted to update you on the situation here. The Pure Empire faction has continued to lose support as more of our people learn about the alternative you have shown us. 3 more planetary governments have declared for the reformed territories this month." Lisa felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness as she listened. Progress was being made, but at the cost of a civil war that was tearing the Vorthak species apart. "More importantly," Thane continued, "we have located Commander Zethkar." Lisa's attention sharpened. Zethkar had returned to Vorthak Space 6 months earlier, claiming he needed to help his people understand the changes that were coming. Despite her concerns for his safety, Lisa had supported his decision to go back. "He is alive," Thane said, "but the situation is complicated. The Pure Empire has declared him a traitor and placed a substantial bounty on his capture. However, he has gathered a following among younger Vorthak who see him as a symbol of transformation. He is essentially leading an underground movement promoting the ideas you taught him." The message shifted to show surveillance footage of a figure Lisa immediately recognized. Zethkar stood before a group of young Vorthak soldiers, speaking, with the same passion he had once reserved for conquest and domination. But now his words were about healing, understanding, and the possibility of strength without violence. "The most significant development," Thane continued, "is that he has established contact with survivors of the species we once conquered. He is working to build what he calls circles of healing, where former victims and former oppressors can meet to address their shared trauma." Lisa watched the footage with a mixture of pride and concern. Zethkar had taken the concepts she had shared with him and expanded them beyond anything she had imagined. But he was also putting himself in tremendous danger by challenging the core beliefs of the Pure Empire. "He sends his gratitude," Thane concluded, "and asked me to tell you that the seed you planted has grown into a forest. He also says that he has finally learned the difference between being feared and being respected." The message ended, leaving Lisa to contemplate how far they had all come from that day in the torture chamber when she had refused to break. A soft chime indicated another incoming communication. This one bore the seal of Earth's diplomatic corps, and Lisa opened it with curiosity. "Dr. Grant," the recorded message began, "this is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. I am contacting you regarding a situation that requires your unique expertise." The image shifted to show star charts marking the edge of known space. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected signals from a previously unknown species approximately 50 light-years from Earth. Initial analysis suggests they are highly aggressive and technologically advanced. Their expansion pattern indicates they may be on a collision course with several inhabited systems." Lisa felt a familiar combination of excitement and apprehension. Another first contact situation, another opportunity to prevent conflict through understanding rather than force. "We are assembling a diplomatic mission to make contact with this new species," Admiral Chen continued. "Given your success with the Vorthak situation, Earth Command would like you to lead the xenopsychological analysis team. We launch in 6 weeks. Lisa looked at Alex, who had been listening to the message with growing concern. "Another dangerous assignment," he said quietly. "Another opportunity to prove that understanding is stronger than fear," Lisa corrected. "The galaxy is full of species that have never learned there is an alternative to violence. Someone has to show them that choice exists." She began drafting her acceptance of the mission, knowing